They're gonna tell us something. They are playing soccer downstairs. Maybe هم بيبلغوا عنهم. مش عارفة. نبدأ نرنم. لم ترى عين إلها غيرك. جاهزين؟ واحد، اثنين، ثلاثة. لم ترى عين إلها غيرك يفتح السجن وينبع القيود. لم ترى عين. انتم مش عارفين الترنيمة؟ جديد عليكم؟ يلا بينا نتشجع. واحد، اثنين، ثلاثة. لم ترى عين إلها غيرك يفتح السجن وينزع القيود. لم ترى عين إلها غيرك يفتح السجن وينزع القيود ويشق الغمر فإذا طريق لا تعوقه جبال أو سدود. لم ترى عين إلها غيرك. لم ترى عين إلها غيرك. من سواك يا ترى في الآتون أو ينجي النفس من جب الأسود. من سواك يا ترى في الآتون أو ينجي النفس من جب الأسود. من ينير القفر إن حل الظلام بإلهي بحب في صورة عمود. لم ترى عين إلها غيرك. لم ترى عين إلها غيرك. كم تألمت على عود صليب كي توعد لي مكانا في الخلود. كم تألمت على عود صليب كي توعد لي مكانا في الخلود. ووعدتني ستأتي عن قريب وتهبني ثقل مجد بالصعود. لم ترى عين إلها غيرك. لم ترى عين إلها غيرك.
I'm actually going to ask you to move up and then you can start. Yeah, well. Hi, guys. Hello. Every week we're so far back. I don't understand. There's so much space. Please, if you could move up, it'd be great. Even just a little bit. Thank you, Mary. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Please feel free. There's so much space. Nothing bad is going to happen if you move up. It's okay. I understand.
Thank you. Yeah. got it. I'll start us off. Okay. Let's see. Hi, guys. I'm Mina, Dr. Buttress, whatever you'd like to call me. Give me just 1 minute, I'll get our presentation ready. But just as Mary said, if you all could try to come towards the front of the room. Our hope today is to talk a little bit about talking to our kids in general, particularly about the use of electronics, the use of social media and different apps and resources. And we'd like to have a discussion all together at the end. If you give me just 1 moment, I'll get that ready for you. Let's see. It was, let me see if, there it is. It is, which desktop is supposed to be running, which is what I'm hoping. There we go. Perfect. We can wait.
No, you can start. So maybe, Mariam, like,
I'll make it easy, don't worry.
You can, I think you can talk out too, right?
I can't, not well enough for
Okay.
this topic, I promise. Okay. All right, everyone. So we'll get started for the time being. So many of you I've met before, but some of you are new faces. My name is Mina Buttress. I am here tonight to talk to you a little bit about guiding your child's tech use, specifically creating change in behaviors, not just for your kids, but for yourselves, and how to navigate those kinds of conversations with your kids overall. You got it. Okay. Sure? Better? Okay. Fantastic. Alrighty. So I was just doing introductions.
okay.
But perfect. Okay. So very brief background. I'm going through neuropsychiatry residency training right now. I finished medical school over at UMass, continuing my training both in neurology and psychiatry, really looking at the intersection between the brain, the mind, and behavior throughout the rest of my training. And I wanted to go over a few different things with you all today. I wanted to go over the use of the internet, the use of electronics in general. What are our kids typically using these days? When does it become a problem? And then the real meat of the conversation today is going to be about how do we talk to our kids about what they're using the internet for, how much they're using their phones, their electronics, their devices. We'll talk a little bit about some of the tools you can use, when to seek further help, and then ultimately coming to the end, which is how do we piece this all together for our kids?
What's your name again? I'm sorry, I didn't get مينا. النهارده معانا مينا هيتكلم على استخدام الانترنت وليه امتى بيكون في مشاكل وامتى ما بيبقاش ازاي نحلها، وهو متخصص في I don't know what's neurological in Arabic. هو متخصص في علاقة المخ بالbehavior بسلوك البني آدم، يعني هو بيدرس حاجة كده معينة يعني مش عارفاها بصراحة. أيوة، نفسي عصبي وعلاقته بالسلوك الإنسان. فالنهارده هيكلمنا على فوائد الإنترنت ومشاكله وإزاي نتعامل معاها وإزاي نحلها.
So the first thing I want to tell you all is that you're not alone in feeling like this is an important topic for you. Even just going through a quick search, there are resources from the American Academy of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry. There's the American Psychiatric Association, lots of different websites, groups, resources. In fact, even the primary literature on psychiatry and neurology are looking at brain changes, behavior changes related to internet use. So again, you're not alone. This is something that comes up for many, many people, not just kids, but adults as well.
هو بيحابب يقول لكم ان احنا مش لوحدنا، في دراسات كتير بتقوم على الموضوع دوت، من ضمنها هيئات الامريكان سايكاتريست اسوسيشن وال في كذا ويب سايت بيهتموا بالدراسات ديت، لان كذا حد مش بس احنا عنده مشاكل في استخدام الانترنت مع الاطفال.
So something we kind of covered the last time I started talking about this topic is the reality of how much internet use people are really getting to. This is a little bit blurry. We can go into the more nitty-gritty, but when we look at overall use, the average person, at least back in 2022 when the Center for Disease Control, the CDC, studied it, spends about 40 to 50% of their waking time on their phones. When they interviewed kids, meaning they asked kids, specifically teenagers, who are willing to admit to how much they're using their phones, you can see more than 50% said they use their phones more than 4 hours per day, not just for school or anything else, but this is just for social media, just for videos, just for games.
الخريطة دي بتوضح لنا the average screen time في كل الأماكن في العالم، وبتقيس الناس بتستخدم أجهزتها أو الإنترنت بنسبة قد إيه. هي طبعا مش باينة يعني so you can go to the next slide، بس هو حابب يقول لكم إنه معظم الناس من الدراسة ديت من 40 ل 50% من البني آدمين بيستخدموا تليفوناتهم لما بيكونوا قاعدين منتظرين، وبعد كده عملوا انترفيو للأطفال عشان يشوفوهم بيستخدموا أجهزة قد إيه، والمعدل الأعلى معدل إن هم ممكن بيستخدموا الإنترنت أو التليفون فيما يعادل 4 ساعات أو أكتر.
So I think something that's important to look at is getting an idea of what are our kids spending their time online doing. And again, not just our kids, but ourselves as well. And again, just a little bit blurry, but you can see one of the main things that people gravitate to is TV, videos. Now we see a lot of short form videos, the 1 second or the 1 minute videos, 30 seconds, things that kind of come and go very quickly. There's a lot of gaming as well, but more importantly, I think nowadays is these videos, the social media, and video chatting. Very rarely do we have reading online, but a lot of it, again, is this content that comes fully packaged for you to consume very quickly.
اللي قدامنا ده معدل استخدام السكرين قصاد الاكتيفيتي اللي بيتعمل فيها، فمن فوق لتحت اول واحده التلفزيون او فيديوهات، تاني واحده الالعاب، بعد كده السوشيال ميديا، بعد كده ناس بتتصفح صفحات الانترنت العاديه، وفي حاجات تانية، وفي فيديو تشاتنج، وفي ريدنج، وفي كونتنت كرييشن. طبعا زي ما انتم شايفين معدل المشاهدات اللي هو التي في والفيديو هو اعلى واحد، الافريج داي تايم اللي هو تحت اللي هو مش باين ده بالدقايق، بس هو اعلى استخدام الناس بتتفرج على فيديوهات، لدرجه ان دلوقتي في فيديوهات بتقل مدتها عن دقيقه او عن 30 ثانيه، وطبعا الناس بتتصفح فيها بسرعه جامده. وعاده الحاجات دي من الالجوريثمز بتاعتها بيبقوا عارفين انت ايه اهتماماتك، وبتفضل الفيديوهات دي تطلع لك عشان خاطر تفضل تستهلكها او تشوفها وتفضل تتفرج على الحاجه اللي انت بتتابعها.
So I was going to go into this whole idea that a lot of what you see online, a lot of what is prepared, not only for us, but again for our kids, is intentionally made to be very addicting. There are very smart people who are working on the other side of these programs who are looking into how do we make it so that this is something that you constantly want to feed into. And what I wanted to take away from this is when we look at the kinds of things, particularly these short videos and social media, just scrolling through pictures, we realize that there are some common themes in what we're looking at. The main things are that it takes away the need to make a decision. As we all know, sometimes it can be hard to make a decision, to take action, and instead these kinds of platforms make it so that the decision is made for you. The video that comes up next is decided for you, the content is decided for you. There's very little active engagement, and as a result it makes it very easy to slide into these hours and hours that you go in, including, for example, almost 3 hours a day on average that people are spending just on watching videos alone.
هو تاني بيتكلم على الفيديوهات وان هي بتخلي البني ادم مش بياخد اي قرار، فما بيبقاش في اكتيف انجيجمنت. انت مش محتاج تتكلم يعني تاخد اي قرار وانت بتتفرج على فيديو، انت مجرد ما بتقلب في الفيديو بيجي الفيديو اللي بعديه والفيديو اللي بعديه. وطبعا الحاجات دي لما بيتم استخدامها كتير بتلاقي ان هي بتسحب الوقت، والمعدل اللي هو مكتوب تحت اللي هو معدل الوقت ممكن تلاقي نفسك قعدت اكتر من 3 ساعات بتقلب في فيديوهات وانت مش واخد بالك، لان هي مش بتخلي مخك يفكر في اي قرار او في اي حاجه يعملها غير ان هو بس بيقلب على الحاجه اللي مدياله المتعه من الفرجه.
So everything that we have, everything that we have in this world ultimately is provided to us by God. God has allowed that these technologies exist. God has allowed that very smart people work on these algorithms. And everything ultimately is okay to some extent in moderation. But at some point it becomes too much. It becomes problematic. And in psychiatry in particular, there are some criteria that we look at for when something becomes problematic. And it really comes down to a few things. When is this something that you're constantly coming back to? You want more and more of it on a regular basis. Is it something that, you know, if you tell your kid, hey, I think you need to cut down a little bit, is it hard for them? Or if you tell yourself, maybe I'm using this too much, is it hard to cut down? Are you spending a lot of your time using it, getting it? Are you thinking about going back to using the internet, for example? Are you using it even when it's causing you problems? One of the prime examples that we come across a lot is in the mornings, if you're about to leave for work, if you're about to leave for school, and if you're late because you're scrolling through videos or scrolling through social media, now it's impacting your life, but you're still coming back to it despite that. Is it getting in the way of your social work, your jobs, your activities? Is it coming back and back even despite the dangers that it causes? And are you worked up? Are you anxious when you start to take it away? These are all signs that perhaps we need to make a change.
كلنا عارفين ان كل حاجه متاحه لينا من عند ربنا ومن ايدين ربنا، والناس اللي بتشتغل على الالجوريثمز ديت واللي بتشتغل في المجالات دي هي ناس كلها ذكيه و very smart وبتعرف يعني تعمل الحاجات دي. بس امتى نعرف ان استخدامنا للاجهزه او للسكرين عامه بقى بدا يبقى مش حاجه كويسه؟ الطب النفسي عامل زي سكيل كده بيقيسوا بيه. لما السوشيال ميديا او السكرين عامه بيستخدم الوقت اكتر من اللازم من اللي انت محتاجه، او لما تلاقي نفسك بتجيف اب على مثلا سوشيال ايفنتس او متاخر على شغلك عشان بس قاعد على تليفونك، او مثلا مش بتجهز عشان تروح مدرستك او مش بتجهز عشان تعمل حاجه، وبتلاقي نفسك عمال تستخدمها عمال على بطال من غير ما تبقى مفكر في حيثيات الموضوع او ابعاده. ساعتها تبدا تقلق وتعرف ان انت داخل في مشكله.
So once we realize that, you know, something needs to change, again, whether it's in ourselves or when you're talking to your children about this, how do we make this change? And there are a couple different things that have been well studied about how people in life make changes that actually continue for the rest of their days. And some of the most common things that we look at, I'll spare you all the details, but there's a model called COM-B, or capability, opportunity, motivation. What that means is that there are 3 primary aspects of somebody's life, your kid's life, that are key to making changes in your behavior. The first one is capability, the C, meaning you need to have the knowledge, the skills, the abilities to either start or stop a behavior. This could be psychological, it could be intellectual, it could be physical, but you need to be capable of making a change. It's okay.
دلوقتي هيبدأ يتكلم على ازاي نبدأ نغير البيهيفير او ازاي نبدأ ايه العوامل اللي ممكن تساعدنا ان احنا نغير السلوك دوت. في بروجرام هم عاملينه او يعني مقسمينه لثلاث حاجات: capability اللي هي القدرة، opportunity اللي هي الفرصة، وmotivation اللي هو التحفيز. اول حاجة اللي هي القدرة، ان انت تبقى عارف قدرتك وعارف ايه السكيلز بتاعتك او ايه اللي انت تقدر عليه وايه اللي انت ما تقدرش عليه، ومقدراتك الجسدية والعقلية ان انت تاخد قرار او يعني تبقى عندك ادراك بالحاجة.
The next one is opportunity. And this is one we'll talk about a lot because it's one of the ones that we can provide the most for our kids. And it's the things that are outside of yourself that allow you a period where you can make a change. An opportunity for you to have social support, for you to find new activities, for you to do something different than you're already doing.
opportunity اللي هي الفرصة، هي العوامل الخارجية. فرصتك ان انت تاخد دعم من حد حواليك، فرصتك ان انت تعمل activities او نشاط خارجي تقدر تغير بيه. العوامل اللي هي بتساعدك انك تغير البيهيفير ده.
And the last part of this model is motivation. Another one that's incredibly important for us to provide for our kids is either something coming from inside of them, which ultimately is the most important for them to want to change, or something from the outside, something that you're providing them to basically instill a desire to change within them.
آخر حاجة في الموديل دوت اللي هو التحفيز. التحفيز هو يا إما بيبقى فيه نوعين من التحفيز، يا إما نابع من جوه يا إما بعوامل خارجية. فلما نيجي نتعامل مع أولادنا لو هنستخدم اللي هو الثلاث حاجات دول، التحفيز ده ممكن يبقى إن أنت بتحفزهم على إن هم يبطلوا الحاجة ديت قصاد إن أنت بتديهم حاجة تانية بتحفزهم بيها. وطبعا لو هي ليك أنت فأنت بتحفز نفسك من جواك إن أنت تقوم وتاخد خطوة قصاد اللي أنت عايز تغيره.
So the question was, if you do all of these things, if you help them be more capable, if you provide them with the opportunities, and if you help them both internally and externally motivate themselves, how long until they stop wanting to use electronics altogether? The answer is, we don't know. So the reality is that I don't know that any kid will ever get to a point where they want no electronic use at all. Ultimately, we have to find a balance between what does this kid want to do in order to engage with their friends, their families abroad, whether they have specific interests that they want to look into. And ultimately, like we live in a society where we have a little bit more time to allow ourselves to be entertained, to allow ourselves to explore what else is in the world. So it's a balance. There might not necessarily be a time where your kid says, I don't want to use these anymore, just like it might not happen for any one of us. But it's a work in progress. Sorry.
اوكي، السؤال كان ازاي لو احنا استخدمنا كل الحاجات دي مع اولادنا ازاي نوصل بيهم لمرحلة ان هم يبطلوا خالص يستخدموا الأجهزة. اوكي. ازاي نخليهم هم اللي يقولوا ان هم مش عايزين يستخدموا الأجهزة، او ازاي نوصل بيهم للمرحلة دي؟ طبعا الإجابة ان دي مش حاجة يعني مش حاجة ممكن تحصل، لان احنا اوريدي عايشين في مجتمع او عايشين في دنيا كل اعتمادنا دلوقتي على الانترنت وعلى السكرين والميديا وكده اهو. بس ان احنا نساعدهم ان هم يوصلوا لحل وسط، لحل بالانس، ان هم يكتشفوا مثلا حاجات يحبوا يعملوها، حاجة تبقى بتثير اهتمامهم فهم بيهتموا بيها تخليهم يقللوا من وقت الحاجات التانية. ده اللي ممكن نشتغل عليه، لكن ما فيش حاجة نقدر نعملها هتوقف استخدام الأجهزة.
So I hope it doesn't discourage you from at least starting this process with your kids. And what we see in the research that some of the most important things are to start when they're young and really to start whenever you're ready to make changes with them. Now, we'll talk a little bit about before they're old enough to have a conversation, and then we'll jump into what about when they are old enough to have a conversation.
هيبدأ يتكلم على ايه السن المناسب، وهو ما قالش ان في سن مناسب بس قال نبدأ من وهم صغيرين ان احنا نتكلم معاهم على الحاجات ديت وان احنا نبدأ نفهمهم I forgot what you said. I'm sorry.
It's okay. Like, what do we do before they can start to talk about it? And then how do we talk to them after? For now, we'll talk about before they're old enough to talk about it.
اوكي دلوقتي هيبدأ كلامه بالحاجات اللي هنقدر نعملها من وهم صغيرين قبل ما يبدأوا يستخدموا التكنولوجيا، وبعد كده هيبدأ يتكلم على ايه اللي ممكن نعمله وهم كبار بعد ما بدأوا يستخدموا التكنولوجيا.
Of course.
Right now, as we speak, the kids in elementary school and middle school, they require
Mm-hmm.
to use the screen from 2 to 3 hours every day, 5 days a week.
Yeah.
That's not including their free time.
Mm-hmm.
But when they've done their homework or their work, we want some free time.
Right.
So they force us to have more time on the screen.
Mm-hmm.
How that possibly I can do that? If they're sitting on the screen from 4 to 5 hours every day,
Mm-hmm.
they're required to, not just for free time or for fun, they're being forced through the school.
Mm-hmm.
And now every school now almost in the United States, they force the kids now to use more electronic or transfer from hard reading and writing into screen.
All right.
How we can solve that puzzle?
So that's where we come. So let me backtrack. The question was, you know, in a world now where our kids are required to use some sort of screen, usually a computer or a tablet, just to go through school to do their work for 4 or 5 hours a day, how do we work with them to minimize their electronics use? Is that about right?
السؤال كان بيقول طبعا دلوقتي في كل المدارس العيال بيستخدموا الأجهزة من 4 ل 5 ساعات في اليوم، وبعد كده لما بيرجعوا البيت بيبقوا عايزين فري تايم بس برضو على الأجهزة. فإحنا السؤال إزاي بقى ممكن إن إحنا نوصل أو نحل المعادلة دي إن هم أوريدي على الأجهزة بتاعتهم وقت طويل جدا، أو إزاي إن إحنا نوصل إن إحنا نوازن ما بين استخدام الأجهزة بره وجوه البيت.
So I think the main thing is that we have to separate the time that it is required on electronics in order to do our work in this modern world, in order to go through education, and then the time that is optional, the time that is spent doing things that are not productive or beneficial. Because it's important to look at the difference between time you spend on a computer because you're reading or you're learning something new, and time you spend maybe on your phone that is only just kind of entertaining you, wasting some of your time without necessarily providing you any benefit, or perhaps even harming you in some way. So these are two separate amounts of time. And the amount of time that I showed earlier, that's not including the school work, it's not including the computer work that we have at our jobs. This is just time on social media, on videos, on games. And that's the time that we're trying to bring down.
أول خطوة إن إحنا لازم نفصل ما بين الوقت اللي بنستخدم فيه الأجهزة دي عشان الشغل أو عشان المذاكرة أو عشان نتعلم منها، قصاد الوقت اللي هو بنستخدمها إن إحنا نعمل زي السوشيال ميديا أو فيديوهات أو لعب. الوقت اللي هو وريهولنا على السكرين وكمية الاستهلاك اللي إحنا شفناها من شوية دي كانت بس على الحاجات اللي هي مش مفيدة، حاجات السوشيال ميديا، الفيديوهات، الفيديو جيمز، اللعب والحاجات دي كلها. ده الوقت اللي كان موجود على الشاشة. لكن الوقت اللي هو بنقرا فيه او بنشتغل او بنذاكر هو مش محسوب في السيرفي ديت او في المعادلات اللي كانت محطوطة.
So when we come back to trying to use this as an opportunity to affect that additional screen time, the time that they're scrolling or playing, it starts when they're still very young. The American Academy of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry, so basically psychiatry for, kids, teenagers, people who are not quite adults just yet, has some recommendations already on this. Before about 1.5 years, they recommend keeping it to an absolute minimum, just, FaceTime with mama, baba, teta, stuff like that. After that, maybe just things that are educational, but make sure you're there with them. Trying to increase ever so slightly, so maybe they have 1 hour a day that's available to them until they're 5. Maybe after that, you can start talking to them about using it in moderation, but not letting them go to several hours at a time. And again, we'll get to how do we then transition from giving them a little bit of time. Again, they live in this world where they will have friends and family, and there are things happening where they'll want to stay connected or learn or see and experience new things, with this balance of how do we still maintain a healthy connection with these uses.
اتكلم على كمية الوقت اللي ممكن نستخدمها لكل طفل. هنبدأ من الأول. الدراسة دي معمولة عن طريق الأمريكان أكاديمي أوف تشايلد أند أدوليسنت. بداية من أقل من 18 شهر يفضل إنه السكرين تايم يبقى بس لو بيعمل فيديو كول ومع حد من العيلة، حد مسافر أو كده، فبيعملوا فيديو كول مع في وجود الأهل. ما بين 18 ل 24 شهر السكرين تايم لازم يبقى ليميتد على حاجات تعليميه، ويكون معاه حد كبير يبقى بيتفرج معاه، يعني بيطلع حاجات بس تعليميه. ما بين 2 ل 5 سنين نقلل الحاجات اللي مش تعليميه بحد اقصى ساعه في ايام الاسبوع او 3 ساعات في الويك اند. بعد كده من سن 6 سنين وطالع نبدأ بقى نتكلم معاهم على العادات الكويسة، العادات الصحية، وازاي ان احنا نقلل الأنشطة اللي على السكرين، وازاي نستخدم أنشطة تانية او نستبدل الوقت اللي على الشاشة بحاجات تانية فيها أنشطة مختلفة. Did you say the rest? Not yet.
Okay. No, that's okay. It's we'll get to it later on. Yeah. Okay. So one of the connecting questions between when somebody is a young child and when they're a teenager and an adult that I get asked all the time is, when should I give my kid a cell phone? It's inevitable somebody's going to ask at some point today, so we'll cover it now. And the reality is that there's no perfect time to give your kid a cell phone or to give them their own devices. Realistically, you have to see how mature is this child, how independent are they, what are they going to use it for, what do they need it for. And we all need to remember that, particularly as they approach, junior high school and high school, they're going to need some level of autonomy, they're going to need some level of independence so that they can, get to school and back, look things up on their own, communicate with their friends, communicate with you when they're out of the house or when you're out of the house. There are realistic needs once the child becomes a little bit older and a little bit more independent. And you can separate that from using social media, using games, using apps where you're scrolling through videos, because you can provide a phone for, realistic and necessary requirements without necessarily giving them access to these apps and social media. There is a distinction, and they don't have to come hand in hand.
السؤال المشهور اللي الناس كلها بتسأله، امتى ممكن ادي التليفون لابني او بنتي؟ السؤال ده ملهوش اجابة محددة، مفيش رقم معين، ده كله بيعتمد على نضوج الطفل، يعني وقد ايه هم معتمدين على نفسهم، وبيعتمد على يعني ازاي يعني هيقدر يستخدمه ولا لا. تاني حاجة معظم الحاجات دلوقتي بتحتاج تليفون، ان هما مثلا يعملوا نافيجيشن بره البيت، يروحوا من مكان لمكان، او ان حد يجي ياخدهم من المدرسة، او ان هما يتصلوا بيكوا هما بره البيت. ففي اعتماد جزئي او اعتماد كبير يعني على التليفون. فعشان كده لازم نفصل ما بين استخدام التليفون نفسه كوسيلة، وان هم يكون عندهم سوشيال ميديا او لعب او حاجات زي كده على التليفون. لازم نعلمهم ان هو وسيله لوحده، وسيله للتواصل، ان هم يتواصلوا بيه منه للاهالي، وان هم يستخدموه لحاجات معينه. بس مش شرط ان احنا لما نديهم تليفون ان احنا نديهم اكسس ان هم يبقى عندهم سوشيال ميديا او لعب او اي حاجه تانية للتسليه.
So then this gets us to, what do we do and how do we talk to kids once they're a little bit older? What do you do when you actually have to have a conversation with them? And the reality is that, you know, a lot of times it's our nature to want to be direct, to be aggressive, to say, you know, this has to stop or you need to use this less. And the reality, when you think about it, is no human being that I'm aware of at least changes their behavior on a dime like that. None of us, I hope, I mean, maybe some of you have had different experiences, but rarely does anyone make a change in their life because somebody told them to make a change. And that's why we have to help them and encourage them to make changes from within themselves, to be curious about what they're doing, to be patient with them, and to continue to check in with them on a regular basis.
دلوقتي هنتكلم ازاي نتكلم مع اولادنا على استخدام السكرين او السكرين تايم. ازاي نبدا نعمل حوار معاهم على الموضوع دوت، ان احنا نبقى عندنا فضول ان احنا نفهمهم اكتر ونفهم رغباتهم، وان احنا نكون عندنا صبر، وان احنا كمان نفضل كل شويه نتشيك ان، نسال على نفس الموضوع او نحاول نفهم منهم. I forgot it. Checking in Arabic. Checking in. ازاي نتابع معاهم على نفس الموضوع، يعني ان هو كل شويه فولو اب معاهم على الحاجه اللي بيعملوها.
That's okay. That's okay. So when and how do we become more curious? There are tools that are on all of our phones for the most part, whether you use an iPhone or you use an Android phone. And I can help provide more information about these things. I'll give some documents over to Mary that she can share with you all. But you can go into the settings on your phone, you can go into the settings on your child's phone and set it up so that you can see how many hours they spend a day on their phone, how many hours they spend on each individual app. On the iPhone, this is called Screen Time. On Android phones, this is called the Digital Wellbeing app. And there are lots of other options as well. You don't have to use what comes with the phone. But this is a good way both for you and for your kids to get a better idea of how much time they're spending and what are they spending that time on. You can translate if he has a question.
There's a question.
Yeah, translate.
ازاي يبقى عندنا فضول وان احنا نعرف هما بيستخدموا الشاشه في ايه اكتر حاجه. طبعا في البارنتال كنترول اللي هي الرقابه الابويه، دي موجوده على التليفونات سواء اندرويد او ايفون. الاندرويد اسمها سكرين تايم او سكرين تايم ليميت، واندرويد اسمها والايفون اسمها ديجيتال ويل بينج. وفي ابس كتير تانية بتقدر تعمل تراك للابس اللي بتتفتح ومدتها قد ايه، ومنها تقدر تعرف ابنك او بنتك بيبص على ايه اكتر حاجه، وتبدا بقى يعني من هنا تبدا تتناقش معاهم في الحاجات اللي بيستخدموها، وتحاول تعرف هم بيستخدموا ايه اكتر وقت وليه. You want to open up to questions, right?
Thank you. What's your research say about the parents themselves? Like, I'm by the nature of my work, I'm all day on my computer, sometimes on iPad, on my phone. I'm responding emails on a team, a lot of things. And my kids are watching me when I'm doing all these. Sometimes they're calling me, I'm just doing sometimes from home. So I'm going to give them a phone after 4 or 5 years. And I don't have the moral for them to say that, to talk about screen time, because I'm by myself is like on a screen all day. So what does your research say about the responsibility of the parent themselves? Like my mom, for example, she's on winter time, she's on a YouTube, they're watching her like, looking at TikToks. So I've seen like all adults in my home, they're on the screen. So what kind of moral do we have to control my kids when they're grown up themselves? And this makes me worry a lot. Thanks.
So the question was basically how do we talk to our kids about using their electronics when we're using our electronics all the time? What I'll say very quickly is that it's mostly about distinguishing, like we talked about before, the things that are necessary for you to do your work, to do your school, and the things that are just there because you're watching videos and like going through your day kind of mindlessly. The key is going to be about discussions and role modeling. So I'll answer most of your question in a couple slides. And we'll talk a little bit about grandparents as well, because I recognize that that's a common issue. Mm. Mm. Yeah, we'll cover it. We'll cover that as well. So before I move on from this slide, however, what I want to really emphasize is that starting this conversation, starting to use the screen time apps and getting an idea of how much and what we're using our phones for ought to be an open discussion. When you first talk to your kids and say, I think we should try to download these apps and just get a better idea of what you're using your phone on, download it for yourself as well. Get an idea of what you're using your phone for on a regular basis. Make it a family event. And don't yet impose any rules, any restrictions. The key at the very beginning is, again, to be open, to be curious, to learn about what your child's uses are. Once you have an idea of what they're using their phones on, check in with them, because there are lots of things that you might learn when you start to ask them more and more questions. If at the end of the day they come to dinner or they're about to go to bed, whenever you have the most time to interact with them, ask them not just about their day, not just about school, but see what they felt about what they've been experiencing online and on their phones and on their computers. Do you feel, or ask them, do you feel like you've had a hard time falling asleep because you have your phone in your room? Do you have a hard time waking up for school because you have your phone in your room? Do you feel like you haven't been able to go out and spend time with your friends or hang out and do the things that you enjoy because you're using your phone more and more? Again, kind of leveraging the amount of data that you've gotten based on the screen time apps, because then you can kind of connect these things. The impact on work, the impact on school, the loss of interest, or changes in their mood, or perhaps particularly for our young girls who are using a lot of social media, the impact on their self-image. Ask them about these things, but also ask them about the positive things, because maybe they learned something new that day that they're interested in. Maybe they learned a new piece of information. Perhaps they were exposed to a cooking video of a recipe they want to try. Perhaps they learned about a new hobby that they want to start exploring, or a new park or a new place that they want to check out. Maybe they talked to an old cousin or an old friend that they haven't chatted with in a while. Maybe they played online video games with one of their friends and had a really good time. Ask them not just about how does this impact you negatively, but ask also what do they enjoy about it? Because from there we'll be able to start making the positive changes that we're looking forward to. So we'll kind of cover that towards the end, because the reality is there's no perfect answer to how much time exactly each person should spend. It's probably less than they're currently spending, but we don't have an exact number that we know is healthy or not healthy. It's going to be about having a discussion with your kid about what are the impacts. Are they using their phone 2-3 hours a day, but still going to school, getting their work done, hanging out with their friends? Maybe that's okay. But maybe they only use it an hour and a half every day, and their grades are coming down, and they're not spending time with their family, friends, they're not doing well with their social groups. Then it's starting to impact them. It's going to depend more on the impact than the hours. Mhm. Mm. Mm. Yeah. Yeah. So the question. Hmm. The question was about why is there an impact on one person or one kid more than the other, even if they're exposed to the same amount of content, the same amount of internet exposure. The reality is that there are a lot of things that impact each and every kid's ability to perform in school, to perform outside of school. I would ask them, to be completely honest. Ask them, maybe talk to their teachers, because again, it's not always about the number of hours. It could be about what they're consuming. It could be about how they balance their time on these apps versus how they balance their work in school or their homework. And ultimately, it's going to really depend on, what is their specific experience. So I think the next step, once you have an idea of what your kids do and do not enjoy with social media, it's important to be flexible, to set boundaries, but to understand that we're all human beings. Each and every single one of us struggles in one way or another, and your kids will, just in the same way, struggle with things that you're trying to change in their life. But the most important thing is to let them guide the discussion. Ask them, what is a reasonable change for you to make? You've looked at their screen time data, you've asked them about how it's impacting them both negatively and positively. Based on that, ask them, what do you think you could start to cut down on? What do you think is a healthy limit for you, for us to help you reach your goals? Whether it's to make a sports team, to improve their grades, to feel more comfortable with their friends. And then based on, what do they spend time on, what do they enjoy, what do they not enjoy, have a discussion with them where they tell you, I think I could cut this out. I could remove this or, reduce this app a little bit. And on these apps, you can actually set specific limits. Think about specific times or places. Maybe we say, when you come to church, no electronics at all. When you're eating a meal, no electronics at all. We're having a conversation. Maybe it's before school. Ask them, are you having a hard time getting out of bed before school? Are you just scrolling through and you're running late? Maybe that's a time where you say, we're going to cut this out entirely. But let them be a big part of that. And then remember, any time that they go through this, they may struggle. They may backslide, and that's okay. The important thing is to help them get back up and help them move forward.
When we do this, how much we cut them down? If they do something like this, they don't follow the rules. How much we should cut the phone out? Is it week? Is it 2 weeks? What is minimum? And also, I have a question. Another question. If I have my middle schooler and all his friends have phone, and I see that he doesn't need a phone, and I see some parents okay, but just my son doesn't have a phone, so that's what they give them a phone. Because everyone have a phone. Is this like something we can do this? Thank you.
Okay. So 2 questions. One of them was very similar to the question that was asked online about taking the phone away and how long you take the phone away. The second one was about, when to provide your kid with a cell phone. The first question about taking your kids' phones away is, again, there's no perfect answer. My personal opinion is that if you use the phone as a punishment, taking it away, then returning the phone is a reward. And that kind of connection between, okay, I've done better, I've done my time, and now the positive, the reward is that I get my phone back, can also cause a lot of connections that might not necessarily be positive for the kids. Now, will there be times where you have to take the phones away? Probably. But I think, when it comes down to it, talking to them about reducing the amount of time for their own benefit as opposed to taking it as a punishment might be a more helpful approach. As far as giving your kid a phone with the bullying and stuff like that, if their friends have phones, it's something to take into account. When we live in a society where these phones are ubiquitous, where, maybe not the best word to translate to Arabic, but most people have phones, most kids have phones, and there will be an aspect of being an outsider or being other than if you don't have a phone as a kid. But again, ask your kid. Perhaps you can give them a phone that doesn't have access to the things that are taking away time, and instead allow them to use something that helps them contact you, that helps them get through their day or connect to their friends without necessarily giving them access to everything. Okay, I'm gonna jump to the next one. I figured. Okay, let me just run through this real quick. Okay, so we'll hold questions until the end just for now to be respectful of your time. But something I wanted to make sure is well explained is that anytime you're changing a habit, particularly if you're taking away from something you're already doing, it's important to put something in its place. Again, one of the benefits of talking to your kids about what they enjoy about their electronics use is you can figure out, do they enjoy music? Maybe they want to learn a new instrument. Do they enjoy cooking? Maybe you can make something in the kitchen with them. Do they enjoy games, movies? How can we give them something else to do during that time instead of defaulting to their phones? Whether it's a walk, a new habit, a new game, a new exposure, something that they will enjoy that will take the place so that there's no empty hole, there's no gap on the other side. We'll kind of skip through that, but incredibly important, and kind of back to your point about, being at home, your kids seeing that there are phones being used, it's important to be a role model. Now, again, important to distinguish because many of us in our lines of work, we have to use computers all the time. The difference between what is helpful, what is healthy, and what is excessive. Now, when they have family members who are going through and people who they look up to, who are constantly scrolling through their phones, it's hard not to tell them that, or rather, hard to tell them that they can't do the same things that they see their mom, their dad, their tita, their giddo doing, because then you're setting an incongruent example. You're doing something that is not the same as what they're doing. And so it's important to make it a whole family event. If we're talking about cutting down for one person, talking about cut down for everybody so that you truly lead by example. Bring the whole family into it. Be accountable, be open, and then be honest, because there will be times perhaps that you say, I'm going to cut down on my own use, and you still continue to use it a little bit more than you expect. But the key, kind of summarizing everything we talked about, is to really talk to your kids about what they're using their phones for. to get an idea of what they enjoy, what they don't enjoy, how can we fill these gaps in their lives once we take something that previously took 3-4 hours of their day. We have to give back 3-4 hours of their day. See what's really affecting them. You know, is it 3 hours of being on your phone is affecting them? Is it just the 1 hour on social media? What is it that's impairing their function? What is it that's annoying to them? Ask them about their limits, set limits that you agree on together, and check in, adjust those limits, make changes. And ultimately, be a role model. You know, change will start with parents. They will always look up to you all, regardless of their age, for what are the next steps? What should I do as a growing adult? Kind of covering the same things. Check in regularly, be curious, do not interrogate them, approach it in a way that welcomes them to talk to you. Provide alternatives, whether again, they like movies, art, going to the park, going to an event, bringing them to their friend's house. You have to be engaged to bring them something that will fill the time that was once filled with their phones. And then express interest. So if they tell you that they really enjoy cooking, they really enjoy riding their bike, ask them about cooking, ask them about riding their bike, ask them about the activities that they want to fill their time with, because that'll help them dive deeper into those and want to use their phones less. There are going to be times where perhaps there's an underlying issue, perhaps there's an aspect of depression, anxiety, perhaps there's a loneliness that the kids are filling their time with, and these are going to be important things to address. They're important questions to be asking your kids to make sure that they're doing okay. And although it's important to give them time, because they'll ultimately grow out of most things, it's also important to recognize that it's okay to ask for help, whether it's from Abuna, from a counselor at school, from teachers, psychologists, psychiatrists, and get an outside opinion. See what we can do to make their lives better. And then I'll leave you all with the story of St. Monica, one that I'm not sure if you all know, but St. Augustine is one of the most influential fathers in our church. He's written the Confessions of St. Augustine, the City of God, things that I highly recommend you try to look into if you have some time. They're beautiful books that really reveal human nature and our connection to God. And the short story of St. Augustine's life is that his mom was Christian, and he himself strayed away from the church for most of his life. He had what was effectively a girlfriend that he lived with. He had a child out of wedlock. He lived a life that many would consider sinful. And for 17 years, St. Monica prayed that he would come back and that he would make changes in his life. And 17 years of patience, and he ultimately came back well into his old age to become, again, one of the most influential fathers in our church. So be patient with your kids, give them time, and give them all the support that you can. And if you have any questions, please do let me know.
Thank you so much, Mina. Thank you. So Mina, if you guys didn't catch at the beginning, Mina is a neuropsychologist. Is that right? Neuropsychiatrist. He's a doctor, neuropsychiatrist, doing his residency, and he's very knowledgeable, so we'd love to have him back. So if you have questions for him, I think he's open to questions afterwards. And if you have something specific that you would like for him to come and talk about, please let me know, and I'll see if Mina is willing and able to come back another time. So thank you, Mina.
Thank you, Dr. Mina. Thank you so much. ربنا يعوضك. God bless you. النهارده اللي هم واظبوا 4 أسابيع معانا، اللي حضر 4 أسابيع. أول واحد حنان مرقص. لا الفوت. يس. حنان مرقص. حنان. يوحنا لكسان. يس. يوحنا لكسان. يوحنا. ابنه ده. يس. وفاء سرجيوس ومرقص ابو شوشه. يس. يس. اخت مرات وفاء. امجد عطيه ومريم عطيه. روماني ميخائيل سوزان بيباوي. روماني ميخائيل وسوزان بيباوي. عايده غطاس. فين عايده غطاس؟ عايده يس طنط عايده يس. واميره فرج يس اللي هي الست الكبيره وبنتها. هند ناشد. هند ناشد. في حد كان مواظب وانا ما نسيت اسمه؟ حد واظب 4 أسابيع ونسيت اسمه؟ عشان في اسماء انا ما عرفتش اقراها بصراحه. في حد؟ ها؟ الصايم. صايم على الهديه. اوكي. هند ناشد دي بتاعت هند. هند بتخدم معانا فينا اهي هند يس. كمان عايزين نرحب ببولا او مره يجي. عايزينك تيجي على طول. ها بولا اول مره يجي لنا وتقريبا هو جديد كمان صح؟ يعني انتوا بقالكم مش فتره كبيره صح؟ الحمد لله على السلامه. نورتونا. الهدايا بقى بتاعت السحب. مين يجي يسحب لنا؟ تعالى اسحب لنا. هاتي يس يس. تعالى اسحب يس. فيرست نمبر تيك 1. Take it. Yes, الاثنين يا numbers.
You want to read it?
Oh, read. Yes.
Okay. The first one is, take out your tickets. First one is 5833. 5833. Did you get it? No? 5833. Going once. Going twice. Okay, we're going to say the next one. The next one is 5835. 5835. Naveen. Oh, yes. You did it. Nice. Okay. We'll do 2 more, right? Yeah, 2 more. Next one is 5834. Oh, it's like right next to it. 58. I know, we'll mix it better next time. 5834. 5834. 34. Okay, I'm gonna try the next one. I can't see. 5837. I swear we mixed it. 3. There we go. In the back. All the way in the back. Yeah.
Who is 37?
In the water.
Oh yes. Sarah, yeah. Hello. Thank you.
Okay, last one. 5859. 5859. Oh, he has it. Yeah, you got it.
حد يسلم مرقص مشى؟ مين يسلم؟ يدا انا قلت له المره اللي فاتت. مرقص هنا؟ يس. مرقص.
أخيرا يا رب وليس آخرا اجعلنا مستحقين أن نقول بالشكر بين الذي في السماوات تقدس اسمك ليأتي ملكوتك تكن مشيئتك كما في السماء كذلك على الأرض. خذنا كفنا أعطينا اليوم واغفر لنا ذنوبنا كما نغفر نحن أيضا لمن يسيء إلينا لا تدخلنا في تجربة لكن نجينا من الشرير بالمسيح يسوع ربنا لأن لك الملك والقوة والمجد للأبد آمين.